What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about retirement accounts and specifically how soon can you possibly retire. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Roth IRA conversion ladder. What is it? Who is this for? Well, it's for high income earners who are saving a lot of money currently in their tax advantage accounts. And they're living below their means and they want to retire as soon as possible. So this technique of the conversion ladder is very popular in the FIRE community, financially independent, retire early. And ideally this is for somebody looking to retire and use the money in their retirement accounts before the age of 50. Now, why the age of 50? Well, this process is going to take 5 years to play out. And if you've already made it to age 55 and you leave your current job that offers a 401k, there actually is something called the rule of 55, where you can start withdrawing from your 401k from the company that you left after turning the age of 55. That's really important. And when we think about all the tools available to you for tax advantages, you have the Roth IRA. Now, if you're a high income earner, you can still contribute. You just have to use the backdoor method. You can search my channel for that video. Additionally, maybe you have a private health insurance plan with a high deductible, so you're eligible for an HSA account. But for most people, the majority of their money that they're putting in tax advantage accounts is going to be their traditional or Roth 401k. And when we factor in if you're married, if you have a spouse and you're both high income earners, then once again you can double up for an HSA, you can double up on your contributions to a Roth IRA, but even more so, a majority of your household wealth is tied up in retirement accounts that you can't touch without paying a penalty prior to the age of 59 and a half. And realistically, how much money could you have in your personal 401k retirement account? Let's, for the purposes of this video, say that you're single and you're working solo. And at age 25, you got a very high income earning job and you immediately started maxing out your 401k. So from age 25 to 40, when you want to retire, you were maxing it out $19,500. Now, of course, your employer could be offering a match, which would get you above that $19,500. But let's go ahead and round down and say $19,500 a year. You let it grow for 15 years and you're putting it 100% in S&P 500 index funds. You're getting the long-term average of 9.8%. It is realistic at age 40 that you might have $850,000 in this 401k. What would be your growth then on a single year with a $850,000 balance? Well, it'd be close to $85,000. If you think that in retirement you can live on $85,000 or less, then you can start, you shouldn't be afraid to start withdrawing from this account. Now, if you're following the 4% rule, it's $34,000, but I don't think you should bother with bonds at all. So if you're willing to live below what the account is growing at, you should be fine. But the question is, how do you get that money out without paying that 10% penalty in addition to your marginal tax rate? Before we go any further, I must tell you that I'm not a financial advisor. I am not a CPA. If this is something you're seriously looking into doing, I recommend you hire a professional to help you with the paperwork and get you through the process. If you make a mistake, it'll end up costing you more money than it would have just to hire the person in the first place. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is roll over your 401k to a traditional IRA. Now, if by chance you've been contributing to a Roth 401k, then the process is very simple. Just roll that into your Roth IRA, and then you only have to wait 5 years to start withdrawing that money. Where it gets tricky, though, is the traditional 401k, which is what most people and their employers are matching to. So people ask me this question, you can't really go from a 401k traditional to a Roth 401k. You wouldn't want to do this anyways because you can't take contributions out prior to retirement for a Roth 401k without a special reason or tax penalties. And you technically can do the conversion process directly from your 401k traditional to your Roth IRA, but it's not as simple, and I think a tax professional would tell you not to do this. The simpler path is to roll over your 401k traditional to a traditional IRA, then convert it to your Roth, and then you withdraw it from your Roth. So let's get the process here and let's get the vocab before we explain exactly how the ladder works. The money is starting in your traditional 401k. you're going to roll that over once you leave your employer to a traditional IRA. Now, this is not a taxable event. You're not paying any taxes for this rollover. Now, the conversion process occurs when you move some of that money from your traditional IRA to your Roth IRA. This is a taxable event. You're going to pay your marginal tax rate on whatever you converted, and it's going to be treated like income on your taxes that year. However, after the waiting period, you can then pull that converted money out of your Roth IRA, and this is tax-free withdrawals. So this is going straight into your checking or savings account. This is not a taxable event. And the reason why I'm talking about taxes so much is because the whole purpose of these accounts is to have a tax advantage. Let's say you had $850,000 in a 401k and you want to immediately move it to your Roth, all $850,000. Well, anything over $500,000 and you're paying 37% for your marginal tax rate. This is very tax inefficient, and I mean, if you wanted to do this for simplicity, you could, but we're trying to avoid this. So what is the sweet spot for converting money? And between these two brackets, there's a 10% jump. Between these two brackets, there's an 8%. Now, if you're not familiar with marginal tax brackets, you can find another video going into more detail. What you need to know is that the standard deduction that anyone can claim for being single is $12,400, and for married, it's $24,800. So how this looks is ideally once you've retired, you're over the age of 40, you don't want to work anymore. The only income you're earning in the year will be on the conversions you make from your traditional to your Roth. So when we look at the tax brackets, if you convert between 0 and $12,400, the standard deduction, you're not paying any tax. This is your free conversion amount that the federal government is giving you. Then if you contribute up to $22,000, you're paying 10% on the converted amount between $12,400 and $22,000. Between $22,000 and $52,000, it's 12%. And then above $52,000, you start really getting higher up there with your tax burden, 22%, 24%, 32%. In my opinion, the sweet spot is that $52,000, the standard deduction, and then the up to the 12% marginal tax bracket. If you're married and you're working together with a spouse, then it's much easier for you guys because combined you can take up to $105,000 and still not enter that 22% marginal tax bracket. Now, entering the next marginal tax bracket does not affect how much you've paid up to that point. There's a difference between your marginal tax bracket and your effective tax rate. So if you are converting $52,000 a year, your effective tax rate for the federal government would be 8.8%. So if you're converting $52,000, remember that your tax bill for the year is going to be $4,600. So definitely save that money for when you do your taxes. Now I'm going to explain this process twice, one without numbers, and then I'm going to actually try and put some figures and numbers on it to show you approximately how much money you'll be making and spending. But the rule is for traditional IRA conversions that taxes have been paid on, they can be withdrawn penalty-free after a 5-year waiting period in your Roth IRA. So any money you convert, a timer now begins on that conversion amount, and you have to wait 5 years before you can withdraw that money from your Roth IRA penalty-free. So let's look at a timeline to conceptualize exactly how this is going to work. Let's say at age 40, you've retired. You've left your company job, you've rolled your old 401k traditional into a traditional IRA. You need to plan and make it to age 59 and a half. Once you're age 59 and a half, nobody cares. If you're pulling money out of your accounts, that's what it's there for. And the bulk of your money is going to be in this traditional IRA now. The example we gave was $850,000. You're probably also going to have a Roth IRA that you've been contributing to that is going to be a lesser amount. Now, your Roth IRA is not really just one account. It's actually two accounts. The money that you've been contributing to a Roth IRA, you're eligible to pull that out before the age of retirement as long as the Roth IRA is older than 5 years. However, it's just the earnings that you cannot take out prior to the age of 59 and a half without penalty. Now, when you do the conversion process and you're moving money from your traditional IRA to your Roth IRA, those aren't exactly treated like contributions. It's actually a third bucket within the Roth IRA, earmarked as conversions. This is separate money that's being kept track of. So how does this process work? Well, when you're 40, you need to convert a certain amount of money from your traditional IRA to your Roth IRA that you know that you're going to be living on when you turn age 45. And then next year when you're 41, you're converting money that you're going to live on when you're 46, 42, 47, 43, 48, 44, 49. Once you've reached the age of 45 and it's been 5 years, you can now start pulling that money out of the conversion bucket of your Roth IRA, and that's money you can live on. And this is, once again, not a taxable event, and there's no penalty. However, you got to keep this process going. You have to keep making it until the age of 60 by doing this ladder process. So you have to, once again, convert money at 45 that you plan to use when you're 50. However, you can now start withdrawing from your conversion bucket to live on that money after 5 years. So the question you might have is, what do I do for those 5 years that I'm waiting for my conversions to become penalty-free? How do I survive after leaving my job for 5 years before I can start living on my converted traditional IRA money? Well, your first thought might be you actually can withdraw the contributions to your Roth IRA. So if you were to contribute for 15 years, $6,000 a year, there'd be $90,000 in your contribution pile of your Roth IRA that you can take out. However, you might not want to do this because once you take it out, there's no way to put it back in. You're guaranteed tax-free growth in there, tax-free withdrawals in the future. So for people who are actually doing this, they need to have savings. Ideally, they've also paid off their mortgage, they don't have any debt. But you're going to have basically 5 years worth of money saved up to live on before you can start getting that traditional IRA money penalty-free. So let's go ahead and put some numbers on this to kind of like understand about how much you would need in each of these piles. So for the traditional IRA, we're saying that you have $850,000. Once again, that did not include employer matching. That doesn't factor in if you have a spouse who also has a 401k and you guys are working together on this process. And for your Roth IRA, let's say you maxed it out $6,000 a year for 15 years, that's $90,000. You've been earning actually growth on that Roth IRA the last 15 years. So you'd have about $110,000 worth of growth in there that you're obviously not going to touch. Beyond that, how much would you need in savings or a taxable brokerage account? I would estimate about $200,000. Now, for all these investments, for the math I did, I rounded down whenever I could to be a little bit more conservative, and I assumed that everything was invested in S&P 500 index funds, VT-SAX with Vanguard or ViviFax, just the simplest investing strategy that you can have. So let's go ahead and start this process at age 40, assuming that you've rolled your 401k into a traditional IRA and you've started the first conversion amount. And you're going to go with $52,000 because when you reference the tax brackets, that is the most tax efficient for your money. So that $52,000 is coming out of your IRA and going into the conversion bucket of your Roth IRA. Now, you're going to have to pull $52,000 out of your savings, your taxable brokerage account, to live on that for that year. Your traditional IRA still gained a little bit because it appreciated more than what you took out. Same thing with the earnings on your Roth IRA. You gained a little bit of money there. Age 41, you do the process again. You take out $52,000, you put it in the conversion bucket. Your traditional IRA still grew a little bit because you didn't take out more than what was growing. The money sitting in your Roth IRA now is helping you boost your earnings in your Roth IRA. So this is more money that you'll have when you go to turn age 59 and a half. So the traditional IRA is growing slower and the Roth IRA is actually growing faster since you're putting more money in there that's invested. Your taxable brokerage account is still earning you something as well, which is part of your tax burden, but let's just go ahead and ignore that. But you take out $52,000 because you're going to live on that money. Age 42, Your traditional IRA has gone up a little bit. You've moved $52,000 over for another year's worth of living expenses. Your Roth IRA has once again appreciated more in the earnings buckets, and your taxable brokerage account is now down to $75,000. Next year, age 43, once again, you're pulling out another $52,000 from your savings or your taxable brokerage account. Your traditional IRA is going up. Your Roth IRA is going up even faster because you've now put in $108,000 worth of conversion money. Then at age 44, you've basically run out of savings in your taxable brokerage accounts, and you've started pulling money from your contribution bucket in your Roth IRA. You would probably not want to make this go to $0, but drain this as much as possible before you go to the Roth IRA, because everything in here is growing tax-free. And you've made it. You've made it 5 years. At age 45, you can now start pulling out and living on that $52,000 penalty-free, tax-free. Pretty amazing. But you got to keep this chain or this ladder going. Every year, you got to keep moving over $52,000 until you can get to $59,500, and then you don't have to worry about this ladder process anymore. And there you have it, guys. That is the Roth IRA conversion ladder strategy. It's pretty interesting. Once again, there are people who are doing this who have completely quit their jobs. They're in their 30s and 40s, and their goal is to just keep converting enough money from their 401k that they can live on in the future until, once again, they don't have to do this process anymore. Is this something that I see myself doing in the future? I don't know. I don't know if I would ever get to the point where I stopped working on anything and wasn't earning income where I felt like I needed to do this. It's definitely interesting. Okay guys, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up so the algorithm knows it's good. In addition, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. I talk a lot about finance and investing issues. And if you have any comments or questions, or maybe you caught something I didn't catch, leave me a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care.